so it will be available after. If you have staff people that weren't able to participate that want to, or if you're not able to see what I'm demonstrating. So yeah, so that's the basic stuff for, those were just some policy type questions that had come up that people wanted to know about, and I thought I'd kind of get those out of the way first. One of the main things I'm going to go over is creating requests, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but at this point, I'm going to actually go to worldcat.org, look up items, show you some tips for searching, and show you about creating the request. So let me figure out, I have to share the correct page for that. Okay. So if I did that right, you should be seeing the extranet ILL page. I'm seeing some head nods, so good. So a lot of the information that you need is going to be on this page. There's information on delivery. There's information on unfilled requests. The ILL forms are here. You can order routing flags. So this is kind of your one-stop place for questions about ILL. If you don't find an answer here or it doesn't make sense, you can always email me at any time. I'm also on Teams. You can send me a message or call me through there. My phone number is listed on here. I will say that currently I am working from home a few days a week, like obviously today, because otherwise you would all be hearing the delivery sorters in the background making a lot of noise unpacking boxes. So yeah, anytime, if you have any questions about anything, don't, feel free to contact me. Don't feel like you're bugging me. That's absolutely what I'm here for. So we're going to just start out and look at a request form and do a request. So on the request form, one thing I will say is if you log into the extranet, you'll see that it automatically is going to fill in your email address, which doesn't seem like much, but 9 times out of 10, when somebody from a library contacts me and says, I have this book and I'm not finding a request for it. Can you tell me what it is? A lot of times when I look at it, it's just a typo in their email address, so they never got the confirmation email. So by doing that, it's automatically filling it in. It's one thing less to worry about. The library is pretty straightforward. For demo, I'm just going to be Berlin because it's at the top. For your request number, it is your library's 2-letter code followed by whatever number you're on. And people do this different ways, and I'm going to explain why I prefer you do it this way, and it's going to be easiest for me. Your 2-letter code, no spaces, no dashes, and then whatever request number you're on. The reason I asked for that is that everybody's is consistent that way. And if you're asking me about a request and I'm searching within my email, I have requests from all libraries. So it's a lot easier for me to search if everything is in that same format, especially if it's a title that has common words in it, because that can bring up a lot of extra things. So if I have the request number and I know I can just do BE13 and I don't have to try BE-13 or BE space 13. So that saves me a ton of time and is super appreciated. Patron info, this is 100% for you. That's there because I know for a lot of you, this is what you use as your request. So either you're going to take that email that you get and print it off if you prefer to have paper records, or you're going to put that email into an email folder, and that's going to be your record so that when the item comes in, you know who it's for, who to get it ready for and send it to. So what you put there is up to you. It doesn't make any difference to me. Now, item info is the important bit. And for this, I'm going to click on it. We're going to go to worldcat.org and I'm going to search for some items, and I'm going to show you a couple different ways to search. So I have a title I am going to do. So Lost and Found is the title I'm looking for, which is a fairly generic title. And I'm not even seeing the right author that I'm looking for on this first page of results. So one of the things that you can do when you're searching is, because this is just a keyword search, you can do the author and the title in the same search. And you'll see my search results, the number of results went down dramatically, because initially I had over 300,000. By adding the author in there, it brought it down, to 1,200. Much more reasonable amount. Another thing you can do, especially if you have a title that's a little common or might not bring the rest results, is you can put the title in quotes, but you have to make sure that you're sure about the title when you do that, because it's going to look for that exact phrase. But doing that, I brought my results down to 36. And this is what I'm looking for. So what I actually want is the audiobook on CD. So one of the things that you can see on the side here is you have the option to limit to any format. You can do that there. And it's going to be CD, but it's going to be all CD formats. So when I look at this one, and it's combining records together. So for this, it's combining the records, but the default one that it chose is the MP3 CD, which may or may not be something your patron can play. If you do from this screen, after you've limited to CDs, it's going to take you, and I don't know why it does e-audiobooks as well. So if I do CD there, these are all actual books on CD. And you'll see that some of these are MP3, but some are just audiobook, regular CDs that I can click on. Whether you pick that bib record for the MP3 CD is fine, as long as your patron can use it. If they prefer the regular CDs, note that on there, and I'll try for those first. And then if I can't find that, I'll go with the MP3 CD if they have the player that can play that. I'm going to go back to the first screen to show you something else. The other option is, we searched under everything. I could have started under CDs. And done the search. And you'll see my results look a little bit different. But I still, on the top, again, is that same record that I came to before for that MP3 CD. So it's still going to get me the same thing. It's just that depending on how you search, you're going to get slightly different results, and they're going to get refined. You can refine them in different ways based on what they are. One thing I will say is that the holdings that are showing here are showing for all of those CD holdings right now. Because like I said, it's combining them all together. So I'm getting that MP3 CD, I'm getting those e-audios. Go back again and just do the CDs. Even in that case, when I pick the one that is, it's 3 sound discs, it's actually the one I want. These holdings are for all 19 editions. If you see this under the location, it says all 19 editions. So to see the holdings for just that edition, I click on just that edition, and it's going to limit them down more. In most cases, this isn't going to matter for you for a couple reasons. One, not every library who catalogs or has their holdings in OCLC will have their holdings showing up in worldcat.org. Worldcat.org is a separate, free for the public to use, but you have to have certain subscriptions in order for your holdings to show up in there. So I don't know if you've ever noticed, our holdings don't show up in there because we don't pay for that other subscription. So even though you might think, well, I don't want to go out of state, I'm going to just look and see if there's Wisconsin holdings, that's not necessarily accurate. So I wouldn't worry too much about what the holdings are. Worry just about finding, the bib record that's for what you want, that most closely matches. So then we found what we want. The information you want to copy and paste into the form is you're going to go from title through the edition format, which I can do Control-C, or I can right-click and copy. Now I'm going to paste that into the item info field. So I've got the author, the title, the publisher information. It shows me it's a book on CD. Then the other bit of information I need is either the OCLC number or the ISBN. There's two places you can find the OCLC number. If you click on permalink up here, it's going to give you a link that links directly to this record, and the last portion of that is the actual OCLC number. So I can copy and paste that whole link, or if you prefer, for some items, ISBN might be the better option. I've been doing some requests lately for graphic novel series, and there's multiple graphic novel series with the same name. So they want volume 4 of that particular one, and ISBN might be a better option because we know for sure that's exactly what they want. So the ISBN, once you scroll down past the holdings, you'll see the ISBN and also the OCLC number. So any of those places to get the verification, copy that in. Checking Fond du Lac's catalog. This is completely optional. If you have the time and you want to take the step and check their catalog and then place a hold if they do own it, if you already know they own it, then it might be worth it. You certainly don't have to do it. I will check that. I just need to know whether you do so I don't duplicate the work you've already done. So in this case, I don't have time. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say the format that I want. I did see there was an MP3 CD. And I know that my patron can't play that. So I'm going to put a note in there saying that they can't use that MP3 CD. That'll help me so I know to make sure to avoid those. Unless that's specifically what you ask for. In general, those are always what I go for last because a lot of people don't know whether or not they can play them or will have issues. So at that point, we click submit and the request gets sent off. You will get a copy and I will get a copy. If I go back to the form, you'll see my email address is already there and I'm all set to create my next request. So one of the other questions that came up was whether or not you could use WizCat to verify requests. You certainly can. So I'm going to show you WizCat. This is just the basic generic WizCat. Their default search is title. You can change that. There's also an advanced search, which is what I would recommend. So there I can do. Can't type and talk at the same time. I apologize. Yeah. So I'm going to put in my search. I did the author and title. Now I will say, you'll see that over here we have the searches remaining and it keeps going down. That's because WizCat itself is a very small catalog. What it's doing is it's going out and searching the catalogs of all kinds of libraries and then bringing their results together. So it's searching our catalog, it's searching South Central's catalog, it's searching the UW's, it's actually searching Minitech's catalogs. So it takes a little while. So now it's telling me it's found them all so I can add to my results. Now I have all the results and you can see when you look down here, I mean, the number of different libraries that it's searching and whose catalogs it has to check. And there's even more than that. Some of them it's finding it, some of them it's not. So then here I have two options to limit. You'll notice depending on how people catalog, some of it says audiobook or it can say audiobook CD. Audiobook player is generally a playaway. I've seen a lot of times where it'll say video recording, which could be a DVD or could be a VHS. So depending when you're limiting, things may be cataloged slightly different on somebody else's catalog. there's a lot. It says there's 23, so I'm just going to click on audiobook with CD because that 23 seems like a reasonable number. Now you'll see now that I did that, I have a whole bunch of different bib records, which, you know, AudioWorks 2008, AudioWorks 2008, these all kind of seem to be the same thing, but they're coming up with separate records because it's one record from each of those catalogs that it found results in. Now, which one you would choose, just looking at one of the bib records and make sure it's what you want. It doesn't matter which one of those you choose if you decide to use WSCAT. The main thing is for this, on some of these, it does have the OCLC number. On some of them, it will have a CERC number. On some of them, it'll have a SCI number. The only one that's universal that we know will work, that I can search by, that's going to be, you know, correct in OCLC, in any place else, is the ISBN. The OCLC number I can search in OCLC, but if it's a SCI number, that's a completely different cataloging system. That number doesn't mean anything to me. So if you do choose to use WSCAT for verifying, make sure you get the ISBN. Again, the same thing, we want author, title, publisher. Description's probably good in this case. So, you know, that's what I would copy in, and then I'd come back and grab the ISBN for verification. Either one is fine. If you're having trouble finding stuff and Amazon is working for you, send me the Amazon information. Like I said, I need the main information. I need author, title, you know, publication information, an ISBN or an OCLC number. That's going to make sure that I know exactly what you're looking for, what format, what type, and it's going to get you the right item. So whatever you want to choose is up to you. Do you guys have any other questions about searching, creating requests? Let me pull up the chat in case there's anything in there. All right. So if it doesn't, I'm going to go back and, whoops, figure out how to share. Okay. All right, if I did that right, we should back to the slides. Okay, so the next thing, you've created the request, it comes to me. You don't worry about what's happening until you get the item. So now when you get the item, one of the things I want to talk about is due dates. A few years ago, the ALA-ILL guidelines were updated, and they decided that the due date that is given to you that comes with the item is the due date that it's due back at your library. So technically, it would be the date it's due back from your patron. That's what the guidelines say, but in all practical sense, it's really the due date that it's due back at the lender, because everybody uses automated systems now. So, you know, that due date is going to trigger overdue notices in their CERC system or in their ILL system. So really, it is, you know, the due date that it should be back to them. So I still recommend that you make your due date about a week or so beforehand. For your patron, that gives you time to get back to you, for you to process it, and at least get it on its way back by the due date. Now, if you get an item and it's due soon, the ILL guidelines also say that your patron should always have at least 7 days to use the item. So my recommendation is, if you get it and it's due right away, contact me right away for a renewal, and I will contact the lender and try to get the renewal. But also contact your patron and let them know the item is there and that they're going to have 7 days for sure. And then hopefully the lender will say, yes, you can have a renewal and will give us more time. But if they don't, at least the patron will have some time to be able to use it. In some cases, we can always, if they say no and we have to send it back, we can get it from another lender. But sometimes that is the only lender. So, if we can get them that time. Like I said, most cases the lender will renew it and then we can extend that time and they'll get more, but at least that gives them something. And in some cases, if it's a movie, the 7 days is probably enough. One other thing with due dates, if there's no due date, you can't find it anywhere on the paperwork, give me a call, shoot me an email. I can generally find that either within the ILL software or their replies to me will generally have that. So I should be able to get you that information. One last thing is long due dates. So a number of libraries, especially universities, have started checking items out for 4 or 5 months at a time. Universities will do that because a lot of times they figure students want it and they want to use it through the semester, and it saves them the work of continually having to renew and do that kind of thing. I, in general, advise against just giving your patron that due date 4 months out. Give them what would be a normal due date for one of your items. So check it out to them for a month. If that's not enough time, you can always just go, oh yeah, we can renew it for you because you still have time. And one of the things with those long due dates is there are generally no renewals. And a lot of times when the patron gets it and they're, oh, I have a lot of time for it, and they kind of set it aside and they do other things and they forget about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, it's due soon, can you renew it for me? No, we're not going to be able to. So I think giving them a more reasonable amount of time and something closer to what our items go out for tends to make more sense, and you kind of already have that built-in renewal there if they need it without having to actually request a renewal. One last thing on due dates, just a reminder that when you're checking things out and you're using the yellow ILL cards, they are set to check out until midnight of the same day. So if you forget to use the special due date, doohickey, and change the due date to the due date that you're setting for it, the patron will start getting $1 a day fine that next day. And even if your library is a fine-free library, the ILL items, that $1 a day fine, they are still fined that $1 a day fine, which isn't to be punitive or mean. The idea of that fine is to let patrons know this is something different. This isn't one of our items. It is different. We need to get it back on time, because that's what's going to allow us to continue to borrow from that library and continue to maintain a relationship that they're going to be willing to loan us items. And the reason for that short loan period is because we don't know how long anything is going to loan for. Some libraries give us, a lot of time, some give us shorter time. So every ILL kind of is different. Ideally, if you get enough time with items and you're able to give, them a similar amount of time across the board, it makes it a little easier for patrons. So if in general, items come and you can always give them 3 weeks, that's a good idea. Patrons, then they kind of know, like, oh, my IL items are generally going to be doing 3 weeks. But we just don't know because we're not the ones determining that. So that kind of brings me to another thing, which is renewals. So to request a renewal, all you need to do is send me an email. Easiest to remember is just send it to ill@winnifox.org. That way, any of your staff, they don't have to remember, like, who's the IL person, who do I send it to? It's just ILL, super generic. That comes directly to me. I need to know the title and your request number. And that's generally enough information. If for some reason I can't find it by that, I'll get back to you and say, okay, wait, is it this or this? With renewal requests, what I found is for most libraries, they will grant the renewal from the day it's requested or the day that they renew. So if they give you if they check it out for 4 weeks to start with, and you request a renewal after 2 weeks, you're going to get 4 weeks from that day. If you wait until 3 weeks, you're going to get 4 weeks from then. So the closer to the due date that you request the renewal, the longer of a renewal period you're going to get. Now, don't wait until the day it's due or right before, right at that time. Generally, most libraries would like a few days before it's due, before it starts to generate overdues and that kind of thing. So a few days beforehand is generally your best bet. And if you're making your patrons items due about a week beforehand, and that's when they're going to be coming to you to request them, that generally works well. That being said, renewal periods and loan periods vary widely across the board. If the paperwork says no renewals, generally, unless there's some extenuating circumstances, that's what they're going to go by. So keep that in mind, and maybe let the patron know when they get it. But if the patron is doing something, if they're going to be gone and they want to get it renewed before they leave, or they know they're going to need just quite a bit longer time, if you request a renewal, ask for a specific due date. Because most places are just going to go, oh, we renew for 3 weeks, and they're going to renew it for 3 weeks. But if they see that we asked for a specific due date, they'll look at that, and in most cases, we'll consider it. And if they don't have somebody waiting or something else going on, they'll generally accommodate that. So something to keep in mind. Any questions about any of that? It's weird doing this over this because you get like no actual feedback. I feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about returning items. And I will come back to like kind of processing and what you do with the items when you get them. I'm going to save that for the end because it's not a part that I actually do, because the items go right to you. I don't have patrons that I'm processing items for. So I can give you ideas and general guidelines, but I wanted to kind of save that for the end so that hopefully you guys can participate and ask questions and say what you're doing and what works for you, and kind of help each other. So we will come back to that. So I just wanted to touch on a little bit on returning items via delivery. If the library includes a slip, which there's 3 different examples here, South Central, ALS, HPL, which is Arrowhead, Janesville, and IFLS. If they include that, use it. It's going to go back to where it needs to go, especially with South Central. South Central Library System does centralized lending the same as we do. At Winnifox, I lend out all of the items for all your libraries. You don't have to worry about lending them to other places. South Central does the same thing. So they need to go back to Madison so that they can clear the ILL side of it as well as check it in their circ system. If you were to send it directly back to Baraboo, it might not get checked in properly. You might get overdue notices, especially with systems that use a separate ILL system from their ILS. It could be checked out in both things. So even if it gets checked in their circ system, maybe it doesn't in their ILL system, and their ILL system is what generates the overdues. So if it has slips with it, use those. Saves everybody time, makes it a lot easier. It makes it easier for the sorters. We use slips similar to this when we loan items out. When it comes back to us, it says Winnifox ILL return. So we know right away this is a return. We need to discharge it, take care of it, and then get it routed to where it needs to go, as opposed to sending it to your library to fill a request. So it just saves everybody time. So another kind of slip I want to talk about is those from Minitex items. Most of the items that are going to come from Minitex, the Minitex area, are going to come through the Minitex headquarters, which is MII, which you'll see on this slip here. What we do, GZK is Winnifox, we send the request to Minitex, and then they send it to any one of their many, many partners within Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. So this second slip, you'll say where it says the return to RCL, ship to MII, that was the slip. Minitex requested it from RCL. So that's the paperwork that's for that. It goes to Minitex. Then Minitex includes the paperwork that's relevant to us, which is this one that says return to MII, shipped to GZK. So when you return the item, both of these slips should be returned. When you receive it, this one that says GZK should always be on the outside. The other one would be tucked inside of it. When you get it, most times you'll see GZK is crossed off and there's like a 2-letter code or your library or Plainfield or whatever it is written on there. And then below we'll have written the due date for you because for whatever reason, they don't put due dates on their items automatically. So all you need to do is make sure that that return to MII is sticking up out of the item. Put it into the red bins to come to Winifox and it will go into the delivery. You don't have to do any other, you don't need a pink slip, you don't need anything else. So it should be super easy. The one other thing I wanted to kind of point out and demo is that for the route to, Winifox is never going to be where it's going. Those pink slips are used to be sending stuff outside of the system. Yes, anything you send via ILL comes to Winifox first, but it's coming in the bins to us. So we know that it's coming here, we're sorting it. So as long as it has, the pink South Central routing label, it has, the slips that Minitex puts in it, or there's different slips that universities that'll say return to UW-Madison. If that's in there, we know what to do with it. You don't need to put a Winifox blue flag. You don't need to include our name on any of the routing slips. So I'm going to take a brief second and I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to, hopefully that means that you can actually see me now. If anybody can tell me if that's the case. Yes, okay. So I'm going to hold up a couple things to show you. So like this is another example, and I don't know if you can see this or read it. So it says to SCLS for Manitowoc. Now, the thing is that South Central is a library system, and they also run our statewide delivery. So while everything goes through South Central, much like everything you send goes through Winifox, not all libraries are part of the South Central library system. So you want to make sure that you're putting the correct system on the top line. And then it will go from us into the South Central delivery onto whichever system. Another thing I want to mention is you've seen these slips. When you get an item from IFLS, it has one of these long bookmark slips in it. So it'll come to you and it'll have your library's information sticking out of the top. I hope you can see this, I can't tell. And then theoretically, you can flip it over and send it back, put the date and where it's coming from, your library's name, and it's all good to go. A lot of times it gets folded though. So if you fold that in half and you put it, and ideally, the what's on top is to IFLS, which is what you want. But if you flip it over, the other information is still there, where it came from. And the problem is that when we see it, we see, yes, it's IFLS. We know that we're going to put it in the box, but it leaves here and it goes to the South Central Delivery Hub and it gets sorted. And it goes from there and it gets sorted multiple times by multiple hands. And if you're doing box after box of books and somebody put it in there upside down and that's how they pick it up, they're going to see that and it could just make a loop and come right back. So if you can just fold it so that that part is not going to be showing when it goes into the book. Hopefully you can see that. Then there's no question as to where it's going. So that kind of saves a little bit of time. For OCLC items, again, like I said, you just want to have that MII sticking out of the book. Generally with these, I recommend put a rubber band around it because it is thicker paperwork, so there's more of a chance it could slide out. If you have like a book on CD, you can a lot of times just slide it right in that cover, the plastic cover on there. If you have just a shorter slip that you need to put into a book, we're not supposed to put tape onto books anymore. So what I suggest you do is you have the paperwork that needs to go back with the item. Just use a piece of tape to attach it to that, and then stick that in the book. And then it's going to be in there. It's going to be more solid. Plus, when they go to pull that out, there's their paperwork, and they aren't having to flip through the book to try to find it, which is especially true for South Central, where they just have that small pink slip as their paperwork. So, all right. So I just wanted to show you those couple things to kind of, the things that we've been tending to run into that can be an issue.
Question?
Yes.
So I have this one.
Yes.
And I have their little pink slip that they had with it.
Okay, the one that was with it, is that the one addressed to you?
The pink one is addressed to me.
Okay, the one that's addressed to you can get tossed.
Okay.
That doesn't need to go back. The paperwork that came with the item should be returned with it, but you'll need to fill out a new pink slip. And that's sometimes the slip you got can be helpful in figuring out how to fill out the return slip. But I'm going to go over that in a second because we're going to go to the extranet, and I'll do that now. Let me find the correct page to share. Okay. All right. So on the extranet, if you scroll down, there's a section for delivery, and then under statewide delivery libraries is going to take you to the list. So what library is that for? Because that'll give me something to look up.
This one was University of Wisconsin River Falls.
Okay. I will say most of the UWs are just going to be UW, whatever library it is, on the top line. And that's all you need.
Okay.
So we'll scroll down. We'll see UW River Falls. It does tell you the name of the library, but you don't need to worry about that. I wish they had this so that, you know, these top lines scrolled with it. But the first line is what's going to go on the second line of the pink slip. And this third line, the 2, goes on the top line. So for UWs, it's pretty much just going to be UW whatever. But let's say we have something to return to Janesville. So I'll click on J to get to Janesville. So it tells me Janesville Public Library, and that system head is Arrowhead. So Arrowhead would go on the top line, Janesville would go on the second line. It does tell me what its given name is, I guess. Well, let's see. I'll show you one that would be, so we'll scroll down. So like, for example, Westfield, Ethel Everhard Memorial, if that's what happens to be stamped on the book and that's the only thing you're seeing and you're like, where is this? They do have really good cross references. So it'll tell me Ethel Everhard Memorial is actually Westfield. So if I click on that, it's going to tell me system delivery hub. So the 2 is Winnifox, and then it's going to be Westfield Library. So it is good for that. If, you know, most libraries are pretty good at having the city name as well, but not always. So that information is there. If you're still confused, shoot me an email, you know, send me a message in Teams, give me a call, and I can tell you what you need to do. But for the most part, it's in there, and there are only a handful of Wisconsin libraries, public libraries, and universities. I think all the public libraries are. There's a couple of universities further up north. I can't even think of the one off the top of my head that aren't on the delivery, but most in-state libraries are going to be on the delivery. It's just a matter of figuring out, okay, what system they're a part of, or how exactly does that get routed to them. So one other thing I want to mention about the pink slips, when you fill them out, they do come to you pre-filled out with Winnifox. It's still helpful for you to put your name above or below that, your library name. So if there is a question, we know where it came from. The other thing that I'll mention is if you have an item that just gets returned in your book drop and you're returning it as a courtesy, write courtesy return on that pink slip. Otherwise, what's going to happen is on the other end, that library is going to be looking at it going, okay, I'm getting this ILL back. There's no paperwork with it, which you should be returning the paperwork with it every time. But they're going to think, oh, they forgot to return, and they're going to be looking through all their records, spending a bunch of time trying to find it, when what it really is it's just something a patron dropped in your book drop. So it just saves everybody time if you can just quick write on their courtesy return. Then they know. It also gives them the option, then they can look at what the date that you sent it back to them in courtesy return. They can decide if they do fine, they can decide if they want to backdate it or whether, you know, the patron will get the fine. So it's nice if, you know, if you're already doing the courtesy of sending it back to them, to give them that extra courtesy as well. All right, I'm going to go back to my slides, I think. All right.
So are we always sending a pink slip?
If it has a slip with it, like this Minitex one has it. If it has a slip where, and I didn't have one, I tried to grab a couple out of the delivery yesterday, so I'd have examples. If it has a slip in it that is from like a university and it says return to UW Green Bay, and that's a part that would stick up out of the top, you can put that in there with that sticking up out of the top. I can send an example of a picture of that. I'm going to send an email after this with a couple links to things I mentioned, and I can include a picture of that in there. But if there's anything that's with it that you can use as a routing slip, if it doesn't matter what color it is, it's white, it's green, it's whatever, that's returned to, that's very clearly who it's to, use that. If there's none of that, then you'll use the pink slip. Okay, then I'm going to talk really briefly about when you have to mail things back. I find it's a good idea, especially if you're a smaller library. Whatever packaging it comes in, set it aside. Then you know you have the right size package to mail it back in. Sometimes libraries will say, you know, please only mail in a box. Well, if it came in a box, then you know you have the right size box. So if you have a spot where you can set those aside, that's a good idea. And it's going to save you having to spend money on buying shipping materials. The other thing I want to mention is USPS does offer free tracking. It's not, you don't get any insurance or anything with it, but it is tracking so that you can at least kind of tell where things are. Because I know that there are times we had an item that we mailed to a borrower that went between the same 2 post offices for 3 weeks. It just kept bouncing back and forth. It did finally get where it was going, thank goodness, but it was good because we could kind of see what was going on with it at least, and saved us that. So you can order these from the USPS website. The cost is $0. You get a stack. It's a stack like this. It's thicker. They're all bundled together. It's 50 of them at a time. You can order up to 4 bundles at once. So you can order, you know, there's stickers. So you'll see that there's this bottom part where it says USPS tracking customer receipt and it has the number written on it. That is a separate sticker you can peel off. You can peel that off, put it on your paperwork so that if it comes up in overdue, you can pull it up and go, oh yeah, here it is. Here's what the request, here's what the tracking was. You can look it up, see where it is. And then the other part of the sticker with the barcode is what actually goes onto the package that the post office scans, and that, you know, kind of keeps track of where it is. It's not something you have to do, but like I said, it's free. It kind of gives you peace of mind. You know where things are, you know what's going on. So it's definitely worth considering. All right. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the cases where you don't get the item. So when I send you an unfilled reply, it'll say in the subject line, unfilled in all caps. It has your request number and the title. And then in the body of it, it's going to have your original request, and it's going to have a long list of letters and numbers that are the reason that it's unfilled. I don't write those out because it can be very time consuming. And I found in a lot of cases, people just go, it's unfilled. Okay. So I can certainly, if the one thing I will say I'm not going to probably do is write out the names of the libraries, which is the, what's on the right hand side of the screen here. Those, what I'm seeing in the letters. I'm not necessarily seeing what they correspond with. Some of them I know off the top of my head, some I don't. But that isn't really the most important part of the reply. What's really more important is the reasons. And I forgot to include on here the long string of what you would normally see. But for the particular request that I was giving the example of, the reply was 50 TEFMT. TEFMT is Midwest Tapes, which is a supplier. It's a bookseller distributor. You'll say ALBRS, which is a Libris, BTCTA, which is Baker and Taylor. These are places that don't actually lend items. So they're not accessible. There's a few that look like libraries that aren't, but they are catalog and clearing houses for a large number of libraries. So they don't actually own the items themselves. So if you see 50, it means it's just not accessible. We can't get it. 13, like the 13 EYP, those went together. Detroit Public Library charges to loan. We don't have the ability to pay for interlibrary loan, and it's not something that you're allowed to pass on that charge to your patron per state statute. So we just can't get it because we don't have the funds to do it. 41, lender doesn't loan this format, which was the next three I happen to know. You'll see that mostly with audiovisual. There are libraries that don't loan any AV. There are some that just don't loan DVDs, or maybe they don't loan Blu-rays or whatever it is, but they don't lend that particular format. So it's not a thing we're going to be able to get. 5 is not owned. Obviously, that's self-explanatory. 36 is a little different, and I'm going to kind of go to the next page because I talk about this a little more here. And that's when is it okay to re-request something that was unfilled? And this is part of why I don't write out all of the long reasons for replies. I think and I'm going to include this in the email I send, and I'm going to add it to a document that's currently on the extranet that kind of covered what was on the last slide. Knowing the few things that are actually codes for things that means that you could potentially request it again is really the main thing you need to know. One is in use. If it's in use, we can certainly try again. The other one that goes along with in use is 31, which is in constant demand, which means beyond it being in use at that library, they have a bunch of holds on it. So it's not going to be available anytime soon. In use, you can probably try again in a couple weeks. In constant demand means they already have multiple holds, so you should probably wait a couple months maybe before we try to get it again. Or if there's a ton of letters combinations behind that, that means that we tried a lot of places that said it was in use and a lot of places that said it's in constant demand. Maybe you want to look at that and say, is this something we should buy? Is this something it would make sense for us to have? 30 is too new. We talked about that earlier. Generally, when I send you a reply for something being too new, I will include the publication date. So, if, you know for a book, it has to be 4 months old. You can look at that and go, okay, I can request it again after this date because it'll be past that 4 months. You may get it back with a bunch of 31s and 1s, which means you may need to wait a little bit longer, but at least you could try. The other one you can retry to some extent is if it's non-circ or genealogical. And in that sense, you can retry if you provide information on what you would like copied. So if there's something specific they're looking for, we can ask for a copy of the title page and index. We can generally ask for a copy of like a name. If it's the Smith genealogy, don't say, give me all the copy of all the pages about Mr. Smith, because that's, but if it's Genevieve Smith, we might be able to do that if there's an index. So those can be, re-requested with additional information. 36 and 24 are two different variations on the same thing. 36 means that they are generally a lender on OCLC, but they aren't currently. Sometimes you'll see that it'll be 36, and then it'll be the 3-letter code for the library, and then in parentheses up behind that I'll have till 42. That means they're not lending. They've said that they're not lending until after 42. So they've basically said when they're going to be starting lending again. So maybe they know vacation is done, or they're moving a collection that's going to be done. So they've kind of given us a date of when they believe they'll be lending again. So if that date's in there, we can request it after that date. Sometimes people just turn off lending and don't tell us when they're going to be available again. So we don't know. So we can certainly retry. A few weeks later, it may turn out that they're still not lending. It's just hard to say because they aren't giving us a time frame. If you are re-requesting, it's a good idea to put in the notes that you're re-requesting, because I can go back and look at that original request, see who those people were that I could potentially try again, and save all of us some time. 24 for currently not lending is a little different. Generally what 24 means is cannot meet deadline date, which means that if you needed a book for a book club by a certain date and they can't fill it that quickly, they would give that. But it was decided, since that is a code that's not often used, when COVID hit, it was decided amongst libraries that we would start using that if we're not able to lend right now due to COVID. So it could be that I had my lending turned on and I was doing great. Everybody got sick and we suddenly had to go home. So we had all these requests that were already in flux, that were already in the process. So even if I turn off lending now, they're still in the process. So I need to say no to them in some other way. So they're using that for that, or if they're not able to, so some libraries maybe are only able to access certain collections right now because they have limited staff. So they might give us a 24 if it's a collection that they're currently unable to access. But it's really due to COVID, and when that might change for people, we really don't know, because we're requesting stuff, from all over the country. In Wisconsin, I haven't seen it as much. There's a number, Minitex has been not getting stuff from as many of the South Dakota libraries as they used to. So we're getting that reply from them for some of the South Dakota locations. A lot of out-of-state libraries will get that request for. So there is a potential that we can get it in the future. We just don't know when that might be, because we don't know what's going to happen now. Hopefully, as more people get, vaccinated and numbers go down, that will become a thing that we don't have to worry about anymore. So when is it not appropriate? So if you don't see any of those replies that, that imply that, yes, it could be available at some point, it just isn't now, then you're generally not going to want to do it. If all the replies are, 50 in some code, that means it's vendors, group catalogers. They don't have the item to actually loan. 41 where they don't loan that format, it means there's nobody that's going to loan us that DVD. They charge. And then the other one is 18, or when I say there's no US owning locations. In general, we do not go out of the US for items. That's really because in the end, it's more work for you, because you have to fill out customs forms for sending stuff. Postage is a lot more to send things out of state. If you really, really want something and you want us to try out of the country, get a hold of me. I can look. I will say I had a library contact me just a couple days ago that asked about this, and they searched in worldcat.org, and like I said, not everything shows up in there. So it turned out when I searched in the staff version that I use, I did find a US library that owned the item they wanted. So it's always possible, and I will try, but like I said, it's really more, as long as you're willing to deal with all of the ins and outs of sending it back to them. and that I can find somebody that will loan out of their own country to the US and not charge for it. So there is any questions at this point? All right. Before we go to the question part, pardon?
No questions.
Oh, okay. Before we go to the questions, I'm gonna talk a little bit about processing items when they come to you. And like I said, this is not something that I do because I don't actually get, well, I shouldn't say that. I do. Sometimes I get them for staff members. So, but 4 or 5 books a year is all I have. And, I see all those people every day to, hound them if they aren't returning things or whatever it is. But there's a couple different ways. You want to keep some record, some paperwork. And when I say paperwork, it doesn't have to be paper. Some record on your end of the request and what's going on with it. So whether that is you print out that email, or maybe that you have the patron fill out a form when they request it and you use that, you want to keep that. When the item comes in, you want to mark on there where it came from, when it's due back there, and then probably what due date you gave the patron. So especially if you have one of those longer due dates, if you gave them a sooner one and then you want to know what the actual due date is and then what you told them. If there's any damage or anything weird about it, note that. So if it was a DVD, but it also came with a separate book, or it was a book with a DVD in the back pocket, note that so that when it comes back, you know that what it had, so you can make sure all those pieces are there before you send it back. And then you have your yellow checkout cards that you check out. Write that number, put that number on that request so that you know if a patron is asking you, because in the catalog it's checked out to the patron as an ILL item. So all they can see on their card is that they have an ILL item. And if they have more than one and they're like, I can't remember which one is due, which ideally you're putting a bookmark or a book band with the item that they're supposed to keep with it. So they should know, but we all know patrons are going to take the bookmarks out and get them mixed up. So you want to be able to tell them which item it is. And the only way you can do that is by knowing what title or what item is assigned to that barcode. So you want to put that on there. And then on the reverse end, when the item comes back, then you can look at it and go, okay, all the parts are here. Yes, this is the book barcode that I had assigned to this. Put on there the date you're returning it. If you're returning it via mail and you are doing tracking, you can put the tracking on there. If you're returning it via delivery, you can note that. And hang on to those. Don't just, the item's done, I don't need this anymore. You need to hang on to them for a while, because it can take several months before another library might bill or might send you an overdue even, especially now with the way things are. So you want to have some record of what's going on. So you want to keep those in some fashion. Like I said, you can do a paper file. Some people do a binder. Some have them in a box. You can do it with an email. Every request you guys send to me, I'll give you a little sneak peek here. Oops. So every email that you guys send to me goes into a folder. I have a folder for every library, and all of your requests are in there. They're in the order that they come in, so they aren't always in numerical order, because sometimes you send them to me out of order. But they're all in there. I can find them. I have the main folder, which has all the requests in it. I have a separate one that has any emails that went back and forth, any messages, any special things. So it's all in there, but it's also, I can search that email. I will say one of the big things is if you do use email and you're not familiar with it, you can add advanced find to your toolbar. I don't think it's there by default. I always set mine up. That's one of the first things I do. Because when you do advanced find, I can tell it to search my whole email box. So it's gonna, so if I inadvertently filed one of Menasha's under Markazan or under Nina. If I search for it, it'll find it if I search all of my folders. I can set it to search subject field and message body. So it's searching in the whole message. So if you put your patron information on there and you say, I have this request for Joe Smith and I'm not finding something, I can search and find whatever. I can search for, you know, Menasha and Joe Smith and I can see what comes up. So advanced find is great. If you don't know how to add it, if you haven't used it, let me know. I can certainly help you get that set up. I know for some people, you have a lot of emails, so emails maybe not the best place to keep your requests, especially if multiple people are handling them. I know some of you use a spreadsheet that is accessible to everybody, so anybody can kind of look at it and say, this is what this person requested and this is where it is, and you know, you have columns for all the appropriate things. So I guess that is, you know, what I have to say about that part. This is a part where I think it would be great if any of you want to chime in, because like I said, you guys are the ones that actually do this portion of it, and can probably offer suggestions and help to one another more so than I can. And if you do have a question, you can always, I do have, you know, that my general list of all the people that are the main people that do ILL. I know at some libraries there are, you know, other staff people that you know, jump in here and there to maybe send a request or do some things, but I have a little distribution list of all the main ILL people. So if you have a question and you're not sure, I'm happy to take that and, you know, anonymously send it out to the list and say, somebody is wondering, how do you do this? If you want to get some feedback, because I saw, I can't remember who did it now, but sent out the request asking about how do you organize all your routing flags? And people sent pictures of their little setups, and it was, people are way tidier than, I was tempted to send ours because we have the whole, you know, where they, you know, when you're requesting and saying, we need routing slips, we have them all, and we have a huge table just filled with boxes and bins, and you know, we try to organize them and keep them neat so that when you get them, you're not just getting random, you know, loose things. But yeah, so another thing that if anybody's interested, one of the things I do with email is, you'll probably have noticed when you get books in, some of them come with an email, because I've emailed the lender to see if they can do it. I have a form set up that does that. So I choose that form and most of the information is filled in. I just put in what the request is and it ships it off to them. I'm not having to retype that same information. So if you need to email patrons about, you know, if you want to email them separately about an ILL, like either an overdue or to let them know it's there, outside of using the usual, you know, search system way of doing it, I can show you how to set up a form that basically has all the information, and you're just having to put in their email address and maybe the title of the book that they're requesting. So if that's something that interests you, you know, you can contact me and I'm happy to help you with that. Basically, I'm here for anything that you need, you know, never feel bad about feel like you're bugging me or anything, because I'm really here to help you and to do things for you. So take advantage of that. And if you get something weird, you know, ask me about that too, because I kind of like helping with those like weird requests for things. So I think I've talked quite a bit. Does anybody else have anything? Any questions? Anything else? It's not looking like it. So I recorded both this and the morning. I'll go over them and kind of see which one. I learned a couple things from the morning. I thought I was sharing some things on my screen that I wasn't. So I made slides of them today to make it work. So I'll kind of figure out which one is better and share that. And then I'll send you out a little recap with some of the basic information that I think would be helpful that maybe isn't currently on the extranet. And I'll probably be adding a few things on there that I think might be helpful for new people, or just if you need to refer back to something. Otherwise, I think that's all, I have right now. I think I covered most of the questions people had sent in. If I didn't and there's anything else. All right, well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I assume you were all listening and I wasn't just talking to myself, but
I thought
okay,
it was very helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Nobody actually wants to leave.
Yeah, then they gotta go and do work.
Bye.
Carly, you want to stay on and
Sure.
you can stop recording though.